An African American. He was down south. They didn't like him. They didn't like the color of his skin, and that's what they focused on. And you get that in a lot of different ways. You know, you get an Italian, somebody just doesn't like Italians, they're charged with RICO. That's it. They're going to try to convict them no matter what, regardless of the facts. And that's not the way it's supposed to work. It's really not. And people tend to ignore it. Especially, I notice, especially today, if you are Italian and you are charged with RICO, a lot of things shut down. And I've said this in past episodes, but I've experienced it directly, where you'll try to get organizations to look at the case. You'll try to get organizations to issue an amicus brief just going off the law. And the second they see the charges, the second they hear it's an Italian with RICO charges, they want nothing to do with the case. They don't even want to look at it. Which blows my mind, because they'll look at child molestation cases, they'll look at rapist cases, they'll look at all crimes that say I have a bias against. Say crimes that I think are real low-life crimes. But I'm not them. They're supposed to be the organization that's supposed to be all for justice and all for equality. Aren't they supposed to look at everything with a blind eye and just look at the facts? One would think so, right? But that's not how it works out. That's not how it plays out at all. And that's the reality of it. And if somebody tells you that's not true, they're not living. They haven't lived through it, they haven't seen it, and they haven't experienced it. They're either ignorant or they're choosing to deny it. One of the two. And they're both equally as bad. If you're ignorant about it and you don't know any better, you should really look into it before you start speaking about it. Because those are the facts. And it gets very frustrating. You keep trying, obviously, but it gets frustrating when a lot of doors that would be open are otherwise closed because people don't want to touch certain cases. They just don't want to touch them. And I think that kind of leads me into my next point I want to make. As I always say, and we're all aware of with social media, there's a lot of different blogs and social media outlets out there, and you see a lot of the conversations that take place. I have certain ones that are sent to me, some I look at. I try to get some background on some. I like to see how, what I almost try to do is I try to study the public around us, and I try to study how people interpret different things and how people view topics. And when you go into a lot of these organized crime blogs or websites and you see a lot of discussions taking place, I read one comment, and to me this sums up how a lot of the jurors think. And that's why the whole system will collapse a lot of the time, and that's why you do have wrongful convictions. One of the comments was along the lines where they were talking about a case, and they said, it was actually a case I was part of, a case I always speak about my father's case, and they actually said, along the lines, the case was flimsy, but you got to convict anyway, was pretty much the theme of it. So now, here you have somebody who's supposed to be, let's just say, moderate intellect, where they're interacting online, they're on a blog, so they can read and write, so that's got to count for something. And they make a statement that a case is flimsy, but somebody should be convicted anyway. Well, that's basically just throwing out the Constitution. That's throwing out reasonable doubt. That's throwing out, because that's not how it works. You don't go into the jury room and say, okay, guys, we're going to deliberate. We know the case is flimsy, but we're going to convict anyway because this defendant has an alleged title, belongs to some supposed organization, so we're going to convict them anyway. We're not going to go by the facts because it's flimsy, which was a key word that I read, which really took me back. They're admitting the case is flimsy, and in the same sentence saying they should convict anyway. And that's why when you think about it, having 12 people judge you is a scary thing, and it's not as honest and as just as it sounds, or how it sounds in the books, how it sounds. It's just not, because people come with their mentality, similar to this. They come with that predetermined way of thinking, which says, well, if the case is flimsy, we convict anyway. Well, you're not supposed to, genius, so you obviously don't know how the Constitution works. You don't know how to be a juror, but those are the people who are the jurors. We get a lot of people like that on the jury pool. And that's a major problem, and I always harp on that. And that's really, honestly, that's the whole theme of all these podcasts, and that's the whole reason I think I even do it. I just want jurors to start thinking possibly a little differently. I know I'm not going to connect with everybody. I'm not naive. But if I could get a couple that'll just think a little differently, regardless of their own personal bias, their own personal prejudice that obviously exists when you get comments like this. But if you could get them just to change, if they have a little bit of an open-minded way of looking at things, and they could alter that when they are deliberating, and when they leave, they could go right back to being however they want to be. They want to judge people a certain way, they could go right back to that. But when you're in the courtroom and you're in the jury deliberations, you should leave that at the door. You can't in one breath say you believe in a justice system, you believe in equality, you believe in a fair system, and everybody should be treated equally. You can't say that in one breath and then make statements like that in the other.